People always ask me when the exact moment was. They want to know the specific second my marriage turned into a war zone. They expect a big fight, maybe a thrown plate or a screaming match in the driveway where the neighbors call the cops. But the truth is much quieter than that. It didn't happen with a bang. It happened with a whisper. It happened on a regular Tuesday morning, with the smell of mint toothpaste and the sound of running water. I was standing in front of the mirror, getting ready for a 12-hour shift at the firm, while my husband, Mark, was taking a shower. The bathroom was filled with steam, thick and warm, fogging up the glass. I was invisible in the noise of the water. I reached for my hairbrush, and that's when the water suddenly stopped. I froze. Not because the silence was scary, but because Mark started talking immediately. He wasn't talking to me. His voice was low, smug, the kind of tone a man uses when he thinks he has won a game no one else knows they are playing. He was on his waterproof phone, the one I bought him for his birthday. "Don't worry, Lisa," he said, his voice echoing slightly against the tile. "Christy just approved the transfer for the guest room renovation this morning. She thinks it's for her mother's visit next month. She is so clueless. But once the crib is in, that's my baby, and she's going to pay for every inch of its life." I stood there, my hand frozen halfway to my hair. The words hung in the damp air like smoke. The world went very still. It was that steady tone that kills faster than rage. My brain tried to reject it. Lisa? Crib? Mark and I had been trying for a baby for 3 years. We had doctors, charts, and disappointments. But he wasn't talking about us. He was talking about a baby that already existed, or was on the way, with someone else. And the guest room I was paying $40,000 to renovate? The room he said needed soundproofing for my sensitive mother? He was building a nursery for his secret family right under my nose. In my house. With my money. I felt a crack spread through my chest, quiet and steady, just like the cracks that had been spreading in my bank account for years. If you stick around until the end of this story, I promise you will see something mind-blowing. You will see how a woman who was treated like a walking checkbook turned into a nightmare. Most people would scream. Most people would tear down the shower curtain, but I didn't. I realized right then that screaming is free, but revenge? Revenge pays dividends. Hit subscribe if you believe a partner should be a teammate, not a leech. Only people like Mark who hide their secrets behind their wife's hard work would let something like this happen. Don't be like him. Subscribe if you stand for the truth. And if you think cheaters deserve to be exposed, comment, "I believe in karma." Don't side with the liars who think they can get away with it. I didn't make a sound. I was the practical one, remember? Mark was the visionary, the one with the big dreams and the empty pockets, and I was the structure. I was the cement that held up his life. I held my breath and backed out of the bathroom, stepping softly on the bath mat. I moved like a ghost in my own home. I needed to get out of there before he opened the curtain. If he saw me, he would know that I knew. And if he knew that I knew, he would try to gaslight me. He would try to spin it. He would use that charm that made everyone love him. The charm that made my parents say he was born to live soft, while I was made for the grind. I walked into the kitchen and poured a cup of coffee I didn't want. My hands weren't shaking. That was the scariest part. I expected to be trembling, crying, collapsing on the floor. But instead, I felt cold, a deep, icy cold that settled in my stomach. It was the feeling of clarity. All those late nights I worked, the promotions I chased, the business trips he took that drained our savings. It all made sense now. I wasn't building a life for us. I was funding his exit strategy. I was an investor in my own humiliation. The renovation contractors were scheduled to arrive in an hour to tear down the walls of the guest room, his baby's room. Mark walked into the kitchen 10 minutes later. He was wrapped in a towel, looking fresh and happy, unaware that he had just destroyed his life with one sentence. He came up behind me and kissed my cheek. "Morning, babe," he said, grabbing an apple. "Hey, did you send that deposit to the contractor? They need it to start the framing today." He smiled at me. That easy, boyish smile. It was the same smile he used when he asked me to pay off his credit cards, just this one time. He looked at me with total confidence, believing I was just the bank vault he had the combination to. He thought I was safe. He thought I was stupid. I looked at him. I really looked at him. I saw the expensive haircut I paid for, the organic food he was eating that I bought, the house he was standing in that was in my name. "I'm sending it right now," I lied. My voice didn't shake. It came out calm, almost detached, like I was describing someone else's life. "I just want everything to be perfect for Mom." He chewed his apple, grinning. "You're the best, Christy. Really. You take care of everything. You make it so I don't have to worry." That was the line. He didn't have to worry. Because I did all the worrying for him. I carried the load so he could float through life untouched and unburdened. "I better get going," I said, grabbing my bag. Big meeting. I needed to leave. The air in the house felt toxic. I felt like I was choking on his lies. I walked to the garage, got into my car, and backed out of the driveway. I waved at him through the window as he stood there, waving back, thinking he had won. He thought he had the money. He thought he had the nursery. He thought he had the wife who would never ask questions. But as I drove down the street, the silence in the car felt cleaner than any song could. I wasn't going to the office. Not today. I drove 2 blocks away and pulled into a parking lot. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the morning light. I logged into our joint bank account. There it was, the pending transfer for $20,000, set to go out at noon. Guest room renovation. I hovered my mouse over the button. I could cancel it. I could scream. I could call him and tell him I heard everything. But then I remembered his voice in the shower. "She's going to pay for every inch of its life." No, I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight. I was going to do what I did best. I was going to edit him out of existence. I moved the mouse, but I didn't hit cancel. Instead, I opened a new tab and searched for asset liquidation. The renovation was going to happen, all right, but not the one he expected. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in years, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a woman who was about to close the account. To understand why I didn't scream, you have to understand how we worked. I was never the shiny one. I wasn't the one who walked into a room and made everyone laugh. That was Mark. He was the visionary. He had big ideas and a smile that could sell ice to a snowman. I was just the practical one. My dad used to say I was like cement. Cement is strong. It holds up the whole building, but nobody ever stops to look at the cement and say, "Wow, look how beautiful that is." They only look at the windows and the lights. Mark was the light. I was the wall that held him up so he could shine. I stayed late at work to balance the receipts while he floated through life, untouched and adored. For 5 years, I told myself this was okay. I told myself we were a team. I was the structure, and he was the dream. He had a startup company that was always just about to take off. Every few months, he would come home with wide eyes and a new plan. He needed $5,000 for a prototype. He needed $10,000 for marketing. He promised it would all come back to us tenfold. I believed him. Or maybe I just wanted to believe him because I loved being the one who could fix things. But sitting in that parking lot, looking at the bank transfer screen, I realized something terrible. I wasn't his wife. I was just the bank, and the bank was about to close. But here is the thing that made my stomach turn. The business partner he always talked about? Her name was Lisa. For 3 years, I heard about Lisa. Lisa and I have a late meeting. Lisa thinks this strategy is genius. I pictured a woman in a suit, someone professional, someone boring like me. I never asked to meet her because I trusted him. I thought they were building a company. Now I knew the truth. They weren't building a business, they were building a life. And I was the fool paying for the bricks. But there was one question that kept nagging me, a question that made my hands cold. If Lisa was the business, then what exactly was I paying for last month when he asked for that emergency legal fee? I opened the folder on my laptop labeled Mark's LLC. I had set up this folder years ago to help him organize his taxes. I was always the one organizing, filing, and cleaning up the mess. I clicked on the expenses tab. I started looking at the transactions from the last 6 months. It was supposed to be for office, rent, software, and travel. But as I looked closer, the numbers didn't look like business. There were charges for consulting every single month, $2,000, flat rate. Paid to LM Services, LM Lisa Miller. I felt sick. It wasn't a salary. It was an allowance. I was paying her rent. I was paying for her groceries. I scrolled back further. The business trip to Miami last winter, the one where he said he was meeting investors, there were charges for 2 plane tickets, 2 dinners, 1 hotel room. I remembered that week. I remembered staying home, working extra hours to cover the mortgage because he said money was tight. I remembered texting him, "Good luck with the pitch, babe." And him texting back, "Thanks. It's a grind, but I'm doing it for us." He wasn't grinding. He was on vacation with her, and I paid for the drinks they were sipping by the pool. The betrayal wasn't just the cheating, it was the theft. He stole my time, my trust, and my hard work to treat another woman like a queen. But wait, it gets worse. I found a charge from 2 days ago, a large one. It was for a medical center. It was listed under R&D in his notes, research and development. My heart stopped. R&D? No, it was an ultrasound clinic. That's what he meant in the shower. That's my baby. The timeline matched perfectly. The money I sent for his server upgrade last week, that was probably the deposit for the delivery room. I sat there in my car, and for a second, I couldn't breathe. It felt like the roof of the car was crushing me. I had wanted a baby for so long, and he used my money to have one with someone else. I closed the laptop. I couldn't look at the numbers anymore. The numbers were too honest. They didn't lie like Mark did. I realized that the cracks in our marriage hadn't just appeared today. They had been spreading for years, quiet and steady, right under the surface. I just hadn't been looking down. I had been too busy holding everything up to notice the foundation was rotten. But now the light was hitting the cracks, and everything looked different. I wasn't sad anymore. The sadness was gone, replaced by something cold and sharp. I felt like a surgeon getting ready to cut out a tumor. My phone buzzed. It was Mark. A text message popped up on the car screen. "Hey, honey, contractor is here. He's asking about the paint color for the guest room. I was thinking a soft yellow. Let me know when you send that transfer. Love you. Love you." The words looked like a joke, a cruel, twisted joke. He was standing in our house, asking me to pick the paint color for his mistress's baby nursery. He was pushing me. He was testing how soft I really was. He thought I was born to live soft, to just accept whatever he gave me. He thought I would just handle the bills like I always did. I didn't reply. I put the car in reverse. I wasn't going to the office, but I wasn't going home either. I needed to go to the one place where Mark couldn't hide. I needed to go to his office, the co-working space downtown that I paid $3,000 a month for. He said he went there every day to work on his empire. I had never visited because he said he needed pure focus. Well, I was about to give him some focus. I wanted to see what was really inside that office. Was there even a desk? Or was it just another empty room I was paying for? I drove toward downtown, my hands tight on the wheel. The city looked the same, but I felt like a stranger in my own life. I kept thinking about what he said. If you have a problem, there's the door. Well, I was about to walk through a door, all right, but I wasn't leaving. I was entering. I was done playing the supportive wife. I was done being the cement. It was time to be the sledgehammer. I pulled up to his building, parked the car, and marched inside. The receptionist looked up, smiling. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm here to see Mark Malone's office," I said. Her smile faded. "Oh, Mr. Malone? He hasn't been here in months." My blood ran cold. If he wasn't here, then where was he really going every morning? And more importantly, what was I about to find in the box of mail she just handed me? The box of mail was heavy, heavier than it looked. It felt like I was holding a bomb that was about to go off in my hands. The receptionist watched me with pity in her eyes. "He stopped paying the rent on the private suite 6 months ago," she whispered, as if she was telling me a secret I should have already known. "He switched to the basic mail drop service. He said he was working from home." I nodded slowly. Working from home. The irony was so sharp it could cut glass. He wasn't working from home. He was working on destroying it. I walked out of that building, the trendy co-working space I had bragged about to my friends, carrying the physical proof of my husband's double life. I sat on a bench outside, the city noise buzzing around me, and tore open the first envelope. It was a credit card statement, a card I didn't know existed. The limit was maxed out. $20,000. I scanned the charges. Jewelry store, hotel, spa, baby boutique, and then I saw it. A charge for a lease application fee at a luxury apartment complex called The Vibe. It was dated 3 months ago. My hands started to tremble, not from cold, but from rage. He wasn't just cheating. He was setting up a completely new headquarters, and he was doing it using credit that was likely tied to my social security number. Then I opened the next envelope. It was a letter from that same apartment complex. "Welcome, residents," it said at the top. Mark Malone and Lisa Miller. Seeing their names together in black and white made it real in a way the phone call hadn't. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a fling. It was a partnership. They were the residents. I was just the investor. But the date on the letter froze my blood. They moved in before our anniversary. That trip we took to the mountains to celebrate 5 years? He texted her from the bathroom while I was ordering champagne. He was already living with her. I felt sick. But then, I remembered something my father used to say. "If you have a problem, there's the door." Well, I wasn't going to walk out the door. I was going to lock it. I gathered the mail and shoved it into my bag. I didn't burn it. I didn't throw it in the trash. I needed it. This wasn't trash. It was evidence. I got back into my car. My phone was buzzing again. 5 missed calls from Mark, then a text. "Babe, the contractor is waiting. Did the wire go through? We really need to start the demo." The demo. He wanted to demolish the guest room. He wanted to tear down the walls of my house to build his lie. I stared at the phone. A normal person would go home and scream, but I wasn't normal anymore. I was cold. I was structure. I started the engine. I was going home, but I wasn't going there to pay the bill. The drive back was a blur. I didn't turn on the radio. The silence felt cleaner than any song could. I formulated a plan. If I confronted him now, he would lie. He would cry. He would say it was a mistake. He would try to manipulate me like he always did. He would say I was overreacting and that I was too hard while he was soft. No. I needed to trap him. I needed him to dig the hole so deep that he couldn't climb out. I pulled into the driveway. The contractor's truck was there. Mark was standing in the front yard, pointing at the window, looking like the king of the castle. He looked so proud. I walked up the driveway, clutching my bag. Mark saw me and jogged over, smiling that $1,000,000 smile. "There she is, the boss lady," he announced, loud enough for the contractor to hear. "Did you sort out the bank stuff?" He reached for my hand. I let him take it. His hand felt warm. Mine was ice. "There's a security hold." I lied smoothly. "Since it's such a large amount, the bank needs 24 hours to clear it." I watched his face. For a split second, there was panic, a flash of fear. But then he covered it up. "Ah, banks," he laughed. always trying to slow down progress. Right, Dave? Dave, the contractor, looked uncomfortable. He wiped his hands on his jeans. Mrs. Malone, if the deposit isn't cleared, I can't really start tearing down the drywall. Company policy. Mark stepped in immediately. It's fine, Dave. The money is there. Christy is good for it. She's the dependable one. Just start the prep work. I'll cover the materials cost on my card until her transfer hits. I almost laughed. His card? The card I just saw the statement for? The one that was declined at the coffee shop last week? He was bluffing. He was gambling with money he didn't have, betting on my silence. Actually, Dave, I said, stepping between them. Go ahead and start, but don't tear down the walls yet. Just measure everything. We want to make sure it's perfect. Mark beamed. See, she's on board. She wants it perfect. He squeezed my shoulder. Thanks, babe. I knew you'd handle it. He walked Dave toward the garage to show him the staging area. I walked into the house. The air inside felt different. It didn't feel like my home anymore. It felt like a stage where a bad play was ending. I went straight to my home office and locked the door. I sat down at my desk. This was my domain. Mark never came in here. He said it was too boring and stuffy. He preferred the living room with the big TV. I opened my laptop and logged into the cloud. Since I paid for the family data plan, I had administrator access to all devices, including his laptop. I didn't just want to stop the money. I wanted to know the timeline. I wanted to know exactly when I stopped being his wife and started being his sponsor. I clicked on his backups. I found a folder titled Future. I clicked it. I expected photos of the baby, or maybe house plans. But what I found made my blood turn to absolute ice. It wasn't photos. It was a spreadsheet, a budget. But it wasn't a budget for the baby. It was a budget for after the baby. There were rows labeled alimony, child support, and house sale. He had calculated exactly how much he could get from me if he left me after the nursery was finished. He wasn't just planning a secret family. He was planning to divorce me, take half the equity of the renovated house, and use my own money to fund his new life with Lisa. He had a date listed next to file for separation. The date was 2 weeks from now, the day after my bonus was set to hit our joint account. He wasn't just a cheater, he was a predator. And I was the prey. I sat in my home office, staring at that spreadsheet on the screen. The date next to file for separation burned into my eyes. 2 weeks. I had exactly 14 days before Mark planned to take my annual bonus, file for divorce, and leave me with nothing but an empty house and a broken heart. He had it all planned out like a military operation. He was going to use my hard-earned money to start his soft life with Lisa and their new baby. I felt a cold wave of calm wash over me. It was the same feeling I had when I found the cracks in the foundation of my parents' store years ago. I didn't panic then, and I wasn't going to panic now. I wasn't going to let him rob me. I was going to help him rob himself. Mark came home an hour later. I could hear him downstairs, whistling. He was happy because he thought his plan was working perfectly. He thought the renovation was starting, and the money was coming. He walked into the kitchen carrying grocery bags. "I'm making dinner tonight," he announced, flashing that charming smile that used to make my knees weak. Now, it just made my stomach turn. He was making pasta. He only cooked when he wanted something. It was his tell. He was setting the stage for the big ask. I walked into the kitchen, my face completely blank. I had practiced in the mirror. I looked like the supportive wife. I looked like the cement he thought I was. We sat down to eat. The pasta was overcooked, but I ate it anyway. Mark poured me a glass of wine. He watched me take a sip, his eyes intense. "So," he started, clearing his throat. "I was looking at the numbers for the company today. We are so close to a breakthrough, babe. Really close. Here it comes," I thought. "The pitch, but we hit a small snag," he continued, looking sad. "A server crash. We need to replace the hardware immediately. or we lose everything. It's going to cost about $20,000. He looked at me with puppy dog eyes. I know it's a lot, but it's an investment in our future. Once the company launches, I'll pay you back double. I put my fork down. 20,000. That was exactly the amount needed for a VIP birthing package at the city's best private hospital. I knew because I had looked it up on Lisa's registry. He wasn't buying servers. He was buying luxury sheets for his mistress. He stared at me, waiting for me to ask questions. He expected me to sigh, to worry, to ask, to see the invoice. That's what the old Christie would have done. But I wasn't the old Christie anymore. I looked him right in the eye and smiled. It was a soft smile, the kind that hides a knife. Of course, Mark, I said. If it's for our future, we have to do it. He blinked. He was shocked. He didn't expect it to be that easy. Really? He asked, his voice cracking a little. You'll transfer it? I nodded. Yes. But Mark, we need to do this professionally. You always say you want to be a real CEO, right? I stood up and walked to my bag. I want to support your vision. So, let's treat this like a real business transaction. I'll loan the company the money, but we need to sign a formal agreement. Just for tax purposes. I pulled out a folder. Inside was a document I had drafted an hour ago. It looked like a simple loan agreement, but the fine print was deadly. Mark laughed, relieved. Paperwork? Sure, babe. Whatever you want. You know I'm bad with the details. He reached for the pen. He didn't even read the first line. If he had, he would have seen that this wasn't just a loan. It was a post-nuptial asset separation agreement. By signing it, he was agreeing that any debt incurred by his company was his sole responsibility, and that any money I transferred to him from this point on was a final settlement of all marital assets. He was signing away his right to my future income. He was signing away his claim to the house. He was signing his own financial death warrant, and he was doing it with a smile, because he was too greedy to read the words. Sign right here, I said, pointing to the bottom line. My finger didn't shake. He scribbled his name, Mark Malone, in big, looping letters. Done, he said, pushing the paper back to me. You're the best, Christy. Seriously, you're saving us. He checked his watch. So, can you send the wire tonight? The vendor is waiting. The vendor was probably Lisa, waiting for the confirmation text. I'll schedule it right now. I said, it will hit your account tomorrow morning. I opened my banking app while he watched. I typed in the numbers. I hit schedule transfer. He let out a long breath, like a balloon deflating. I'm going to go call the team, he said, jumping up from the table. Tell them the good news. He practically ran out of the room. I watched him go. He wasn't calling his team. He was calling her. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark street. He was standing on the porch, phone to his ear, laughing. He looked so happy. He thought he had won the lottery. He had the money, the girl, and the wife who paid for it all. He didn't know that the document he just signed was already scanned and emailed to my lawyer. He didn't know that the transfer I scheduled was set to come from a savings account that I had emptied 3 hours ago. I cleaned up the dinner plates. I washed his wine glass. I wiped the table. I was methodical. I was efficient. Just like my father always said, you're the practical one. I went upstairs and packed a small bag, just the essentials. My passport, my birth certificate, the hard drive with the backups. I hid the bag in the back of my closet. I wasn't leaving tonight. No, I needed to be here when the bomb went off. I needed to see his face when the card declined. I needed to be the one to tell him that the bank error wasn't an error at all. I lay in bed that night, listening to him sleep. He was snoring softly, dreaming of his soft life. I stared at the ceiling. The shadows looked like cracks spreading across the plaster. Tomorrow morning, the transfer would fail. Tomorrow morning, the guest room contractors would ask for the check. Tomorrow morning, the real renovation would begin. Not of the house, but of my life. I turned on my side and closed my eyes. I slept better than I had in years. Why? Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting to the chaos. I was creating it. And trust me, nobody creates a storm quite like the person who built the shelter. The next morning was loud. The sound of drills and hammers woke up the whole neighborhood at 8 a.m. sharp. It was renovation day. Mark was up before the sun, pacing around the house in his silk robe, drinking coffee from a mug I bought him. He looked like a general commanding an army. But his army was just 3 guys named Dave, Mike, and Steve who wanted to knock down a wall. "Careful with that frame," Mark yelled, pointing a finger. He was so worried about the dust. I stood at the top of the stairs, watching him in silence. He looked so alive. He thought he was building a dream. He didn't know he was standing in the middle of a demolition site, and the only thing being destroyed was him. He was obsessed with the walls. "We need the best insulation," he told Dave, the head contractor. "Total soundproofing. My mother-in-law is very sensitive to noise. She needs absolute quiet when she visits." I almost laughed out loud. My mother? My mother was half deaf and slept through thunderstorms. She didn't need soundproofing. But a crying baby? A newborn baby that you are hiding from your wife in her own house? That needs soundproofing. He was building a bunker. He wanted to make sure that when he was on daddy duty in the secret room, I wouldn't hear a thing. It was smart. Evil, but smart. I walked down the stairs, clutching my coffee cup like a weapon. "Morning, Sleeping Beauty," Mark chirped when he saw me. He was in a great mood. Why wouldn't he be? He thought. $20,000 hit his account at midnight. He thought he was rich. "Dave says they can finish the framing by Friday," he said, beaming. "Then we can paint." He put his arm around me, pulling me close. I could smell his expensive cologne. "You know, I was thinking, maybe we shouldn't use the yellow paint you picked." I looked at him. "Why not?" He smirked, squeezing my shoulder. "It's a little boring, a little corporate, like you," he laughed, poking my side playfully. "This room needs to be fun, playful. Maybe a mural?" That comment stung. Corporate, boring. That was his favorite way to describe me. He loved the money my boring corporate job brought in, but he hated the work it took to get it. He thought I was just a machine that spit out cash. He thought he was the artist, the soul of the house, and I was just the wallet. "You know, Mark," I said, keeping my voice steady and my face smooth. "Corporate pays for the paint. Boring pays the mortgage." His smile flickered for a second. I know. I'm just teasing. You're the provider. I'm just the vision. The vision." He really believed that. He thought his taste was a gift to the world, and my job was just a necessary evil to fund it. He turned back to the wall where Dave was measuring. "Dave, make sure there are no sharp edges on the trim. We don't want anyone getting hurt." Dave looked confused, holding his tape measure. "For your mother-in-law? Is she unsteady on her feet?" Mark froze. He realized he slipped. "Yeah, she has fragile skin. Old people, you know, they bruise like peaches." He laughed nervously and looked at me to see if I noticed. I stared back, blank. I didn't blink. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted him to feel the lie catching in his throat like a fishbone. "Mom is pretty tough," I said slowly. "She survived raising 3 kids. I think she can handle a piece of wood." Mark wiped sweat from his forehead. "Better safe than sorry," he mumbled. I walked over to the wall they were framing. It was right next to our bedroom. I ran my hand over the rough wood studs. "You know," I said, keeping my voice low so only he could hear. "Soundproofing works both ways, Mark." He stopped moving. "What do you mean?" I turned to him, locking eyes. "It keeps noise out, but it also keeps noise in. If something happens in this room, if someone screams for help, nobody outside will hear them." The air in the room got cold. Mark looked at me, his eyes wide. "That's a dark thing to say, Christy." I shrugged, taking a sip of my coffee. Just practical. You always say, I'm the practical one. I walked away, leaving him standing in the dust, looking a little less confident. I went to the kitchen and checked my phone. I had a notification from the bank. Transfer failed. Insufficient funds. I smiled. I had moved all the money to a new, private account 5 minutes before the scheduled transfer time. The joint account, the one he had access to, was empty. It had exactly $5.30 in it. Enough for a latte, but not enough for a renovation. I looked at the clock. It was 10 a.m. Mark checked his accounts every morning at 10:15. It was his ritual. I had 15 minutes. 15 minutes until the visionary realized he was broke. I poured another cup of coffee. I wanted to be wide awake for this. Mark came into the kitchen a few minutes later. He was whistling again. He pulled out his phone. Just gonna pay Dave for the materials deposit, he said, tapping the screen. I want to treat the guys to lunch too. Pizza on me. Maybe steaks. He was so generous with my money. I leaned against the counter, sipping my coffee. That's nice of you, I said. Pizza sounds great. I counted the seconds in my head. 10, 9, 8. He was logging in. I saw his thumb tap the screen. 5, 4, 3. He frowned. He tapped the screen again. 2, 1. The whistle died instantly. The color drained from his face like someone pulled a plug. What the? He whispered. He looked up at me, panic filling his eyes. Christy, did you move the money? I looked at him, innocent and wide-eyed. What money? I asked. The 20,000. For the servers. For the room. It's not there. His voice went up an octave, cracking. The account says $5. He shoved the phone in my face, his hand shaking. $5. Christy. Dave is in the other room tearing down our wall, and I have $5. I put my cup down on the counter with a soft clink. That's strange, I said. Maybe it's a glitch? Or maybe. I paused. I let the silence hang there, heavy and thick. Maybe what? He snapped, wiping sweat from his upper lip. This isn't funny. Fix it. Call the bank. I shook my head slowly. I can't fix it, Mark. I didn't touch it. I walked past him toward the back door. But don't worry about the room, I said. I stopped and looked back at him over my shoulder. I gave him the coldest smile I had. I'm sure the renovation will turn out to be exactly what you can afford. I opened the door and stepped out into the garden. Behind me, I heard him scream my name, Christy, but I didn't turn around. The renovation was over. The demolition had just begun. And wait until he finds out who I just called while he was staring at his phone. Mark didn't stay to fight about the $5. He couldn't. He looked at his watch, panic flashing in his eyes, and realized he was late. I have to go, he stammered, grabbing his keys. The investors. I can't miss this meeting, Christy. It's the big one. He was sweating. Please, babe. Call the bank. Scream at them. Fix this. By the time I get back, I need that money to clear by noon, or the deal falls apart. He kissed my forehead, but his lips felt cold and rushed. He ran out the door, jumped into his car, and sped away. He wasn't going to a meeting. He was going to hold Lisa's hand while they looked at a black and white screen of his baby. He left me in the dust of his own demolition, trusting me to clean up the mess one last time. The moment his taillights disappeared around the corner, the house went quiet. It was a heavy silence, but it wasn't lonely. It felt like the air before a thunderstorm. I walked back into the kitchen and locked the door. I wasn't going to call the bank to fix the error. I was going to call the bank to make the error permanent. I poured the rest of my coffee down the sink. I didn't need caffeine anymore. I was running on pure, cold adrenaline. It was Friday. In the business world, Friday is the day you fire people. And I was about to fire my husband from the position of Christie's dependent. I walked to my office, sat down in my leather chair, and cracked my knuckles. It was time to initiate the exit protocol. I started with the credit cards. We had 4 joint cards. They were all in my name, but he had authorized user cards in his wallet. The platinum card, the gold card, the one with the airline miles he used to fly her to Miami. I called the number on the back of the first card. "I'd like to report a card lost," I told the automated voice. "Actually, stolen." It wasn't a lie. He had stolen my trust, my future, and my dignity. "Please cancel all active cards immediately and issue new numbers. Send them to my work address, not my home." I did this 4 times. Click, 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 click. Somewhere across town, the plastic in his wallet just became worthless scraps of colorful trash. But I wasn't done. The cards were just the surface. I needed to go deeper. I needed to cut the power lines that kept his secret life running. I pulled up the file for the office space he rented, the one that was actually an apartment for Lisa. I was the guarantor on the lease. Because Mark's credit score was a joke, I dialed the leasing office. The manager, a nice woman named Sarah, answered. "Hi, Sarah. This is Christy Malone," I said, my voice smooth and professional. "I'm calling to exercise the guarantor withdrawal clause in our contract. Effective immediately, I am removing my financial backing from Unit 4B. There was a pause. "Oh," she said, sounding worried. "Mrs. Malone, if you do that, we have to issue a 3-day eviction notice. The rent is due today." I smiled at the phone. "I know," I said. "Send the notice." Next was the home equity line of credit. This was the big one. This was the money he planned to use to finish the nursery and, eventually, to fight me in court. It was tied to the value of our house. I logged into the mortgage portal. There was a button that said, "Freeze withdrawals." It was a safety feature in case of fraud. Well, this was the biggest fraud of my life. I clicked the button. A warning popped up. "Are you sure? This action cannot be undone without a notary present." I didn't hesitate. I clicked yes. The screen flashed green. Success. The vault was locked. If he tried to draw a single penny to pay his lawyer or buy a crib, the bank would laugh in his face. I felt lighter. Every click felt like I was snipping an invisible wire that had been tied around my neck for years. I stood up and walked upstairs to our bedroom. It was time for the physical removal. I wasn't going to burn his clothes or cut the crotch out of his pants. That's what crazy people do. I wasn't crazy. I was efficient. I pulled out a single suitcase. I packed my jewelry, the pieces I bought for myself. I packed my passport, my birth certificate, and the hard drive with all the evidence. Then I went to his side of the closet. I didn't touch his suits. I didn't touch his shoes. I reached into the back, into the shoebox where he hid his special things. His old watch, the cash stash he thought I didn't know about. It was only $400, which was pathetic. And the photos. The photos were of us, from the beginning, when we were happy, or when I thought we were happy. There was one from our wedding day. He looked so innocent. I looked so hopeful. I took the photo out of the frame. I flipped it over. On the back, he had written, "To my rock, I'd be lost without you." I stared at the handwriting. He was right. He was lost without me. He just didn't know it yet. I took a black marker from my pocket. I didn't scribble out his face. I simply wrote one word across the back of the photo: overdue. I placed the photo on his pillow, face down, so the message would be the first thing he saw when he came home to a dark, empty house. I carried my suitcase downstairs. The house was silent. The contractors were on lunch break, probably eating the pizza Mark promised them but couldn't pay for. I walked into the half-destroyed guest room. The studs were exposed. The dust was everywhere. It looked like a rib cage without a heart. I stood in the center of the room, right where he wanted to put the crib. I felt a ghost of the baby I never had. It hurt, sharp and deep. But then I remembered his voice. She was born to live soft. No, Mark. I was born to survive. I took a deep breath and walked out of the room, leaving the door wide open. I wanted him to see the wreckage the moment he walked in. I walked to the front door and keyed in the alarm code. I changed it. It used to be our anniversary, 1014. I changed it to the date of his eviction notice, 0303. Petty? Maybe. Necessary? Absolutely. If he tried to get in, the alarm would scream. The police would come, and he would have to explain to them why he was breaking into a house he could no longer afford. I stepped out onto the porch and locked the door behind me. The click of the deadbolt sounded like a gunshot. I walked to my car, put my suitcase in the trunk, and got in. I didn't look back at the house. I checked my phone. 11:55 a.m. He was at the checkout counter right now. I started the car and drove toward the highway. I needed to be far away when the bomb went off. 2 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Mark. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. I could picture him standing at the hospital billing desk, or maybe the baby boutique, holding that declined platinum card, smiling nervously at the cashier. Just a glitch, he would be saying. Let me call my wife. I answered, on the 4th ring. Hello? My voice was calm, breezy. Christy, he yelled. There was panic in his voice, real fear. The card! It declined. I'm at the vendor. They cut the card. It says stolen. What did you do? I smiled at the road ahead. Oh, Mark, I said softly. I didn't do anything. The bank must have realized that the person using that card just doesn't exist anymore. Then I hung up, and I turned off the phone. I pulled into the parking garage of the new apartment complex. It wasn't just any apartment. It was the Sunlight Suites, a place I had secretly leased 2 days ago under my maiden name. The air here smelled like fresh paint and freedom. My phone was buzzing in my purse like an angry hornet, but I didn't touch it. I knew exactly who it was. It was Mark. He was probably standing in the middle of the Baby Bliss boutique downtown, holding a stroller he couldn't buy, looking like a lost puppy. I turned off the car engine. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of my life, finally belonging to me again. I walked into the elevator and finally looked at my screen. The notifications were piling up like a car crash. Transaction declined. Baby Bliss, $1,500. Transaction declined. The coffee spot, $12.5. Transaction declined. Uber, $45. He tried to take an Uber? He must have been desperate to get away from the embarrassment at the store. I could picture it perfectly. The cashier looking at him with pity, the other customers whispering. Mark, the big shot CEO, couldn't even pay for a ride home. He was stranded. He was stuck in the real world without his safety net, and for the first time, he had to walk. The phone started ringing again. This time, I watched the screen. Husband flashed in bright white letters. I stared at it. A normal wife would answer. A normal wife would ask, "Are you okay? Is the bank making a mistake?" But I wasn't his wife anymore. I was his auditor. I pressed the side button to silence the ring, but I didn't decline the call. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. I wanted him to listen to the ringing. I wanted him to feel the seconds ticking by, wondering why his rock wasn't there to save him. He needed to learn that silence is an answer too, and right now, it was the only answer he was going to get. A notification popped up, new voicemail from Mark. I walked into my new apartment, dropped my keys on the counter, and pressed play. His voice filled the empty room. Christy, pick up! The bank froze everything. Even the joint account is empty. I'm stuck downtown. I can't even get a cab. What is going on? Call me back right now. He sounded breathless. He sounded scared. But notice what he didn't say. He didn't ask about me. He didn't say sorry. He only cared about the money. He was mad because the ATM machine me was finally out of order. He was panicking because the soft life he bragged about was suddenly very, very hard. Then a text message came through. It wasn't from Mark. It was from a number I didn't have saved, but I recognized the area code. It was the same area code as the LM Services payments. Lisa. The message was short and nasty. Mark is really stressed. He says there's a glitch with your accounts. Can you fix it? We have appointments. We. She was bold. She thought she was part of the family now. She thought she could text the wife and ask for tech support for her boyfriend's wallet. I felt a flash of heat in my chest. The audacity. She wasn't asking for help. She was demanding service. She thought I was still the cement holding up her floor. I didn't reply to her. Instead, I did something better. I forwarded her text to Mark with a simple note attached. This is why the accounts are frozen. Good luck with your appointments. I hit send. It was the first time I acknowledged that I knew about her. I imagined Mark reading that text while standing on the sidewalk, the blood draining from his face, the realization hitting him like a truck. He wasn't having a bad banking day. He was having a divorce day. He was exposed. I sat down on my new couch, looking out the window at the city skyline. I wondered if he was looking up at the same sky, realizing the roof over his head was gone. My phone chimed with a different sound. Security alert, front door. I opened the app for the smart home system at the old house. The camera feed loaded. There he was. Mark had finally walked home. He looked sweaty. His suit jacket was thrown over his shoulder, and his hair was a mess. He was pounding on the front door. He tried the handle. Locked. He punched in the code, our anniversary. Beep. 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 Error. He tried it again. Error. He kicked the door. Christy, open the damn door, he screamed at the wood. He didn't know I was miles away, watching him on a 4K screen like it was a reality TV show. He stopped kicking and looked at the keypad. He looked confused. Then he looked at the doorbell camera. He stared right into the lens. Christy? He whispered. Are you in there? He looked small. He looked like the boy my parents thought was so charming. She was born to live soft. My dad had said about my sister, implying I was made of stone. Well, stone doesn't break, Dad. Stone endures. Mark leaned his forehead against the door. Babe, please. I don't have my keys. I left them in the Uber before the card declined. Let me in. He was lying again. He had his keys in his hand. I could see them. He just couldn't unlock the deadbolt because I had engaged the digital deadlock from my phone. I spoke into the app. My voice came out of the little speaker on the doorbell, tinny and distorted. The code isn't our anniversary anymore, Mark. He jumped back, looking around wildly. Christy, where are you? What is the code? I watched him sweat. The code is the date on the eviction notice for your office, 0303. He froze. He stared at the camera, his mouth open. You know? I know everything, I said. I know about the nursery. I know about the guest room. I know about the stroller you tried to buy today. And Mark, that's your baby, so you figure out how to house it. Mark's face turned from fear to pure, ugly rage. He slammed his fist into the camera, but the image just shook. You can't do this. He screamed. This is my house. I'll call the cops. Go ahead, I said calmly. Tell them you're trying to break into a house where you aren't on the deed. He stopped. He blinked. He had forgotten. The house was bought with my inheritance. His name was never on the title. He was a guest, and checkout time was 3 hours ago. He slumped against the door, sliding down until he was sitting on the porch mat. But then, a car pulled into the driveway. A silver sedan. My stomach dropped. I knew that car. It wasn't the police. It was my parents, and they looked angry. I watched the security feed like it was a horror movie I couldn't turn off. My mother, Elena, jumped out of the silver car before it even fully stopped. She didn't look at the house. She looked straight at Mark. She ran up the driveway in her sensible heels and wrapped her arms around him. She hugged him tight, stroking his hair like he was a toddler who scraped his knee, not a grown man who just blew up his marriage. My father, Richard, walked slower. He looked at the locked front door with a face like thunder. He wasn't looking at Mark with disappointment. He was looking at my house with rage. They weren't here to yell at the cheater. They were here to yell at the bank. My phone rang again. This time, the screen said, "Dad." I took a deep breath. The air in my new apartment felt thin. I pressed answer and put it on speaker. "Open this door, Christina," my father barked. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask if I was okay. He used his command voice, the one that used to make me freeze when I was a kid. "Your husband is sitting on the concrete. He's distressed. You are embarrassing this family." Embarrassing the family? I looked at the screen. Mark was wiping fake tears from his eyes, letting my mother coo over him. "Dad," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "Mark isn't distressed. He's broke. There's a difference." "Don't get smart with me," my father snapped. "Mark told us everything. He told us you froze the accounts because of a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That's what Mark called a secret baby and a mistress." "He made a mistake, Christy," my mother chimed in from the background. I could hear her soothing voice. "Men get stressed. They act out. But you are the wife. You are supposed to be the strong one. You don't lock your husband out. You bring him inside and fix it." The words hit me harder than a slap. Fix it. I was always the fixer. I fixed the store accounts. I fixed the mortgage. And now they wanted me to fix my husband's infidelity? "He has a baby on the way, Mom," I said, saying the words out loud to them for the first time. "With another woman. He used our savings to build a nursery for her in my house." I waited for the silence. I waited for them to gasp. I waited for my father to grab Mark by the collar. But the silence didn't come. Instead, my father sighed, a long, impatient sound. "We know about the baby, Christy." The world stopped. The hum of the refrigerator, the traffic outside, everything went dead silent. You know?" I whispered. My stomach felt like it had dropped 10 floors. "Mark told us last week," my mother said, her voice gentle but twisting the knife. "He was scared to tell you. He knew you would react. Like this." She gestured vaguely, as if this me protecting myself was a hysterical tantrum. "He made a mistake, but a baby is a blessing, Christy. We have wanted a grandchild for so long, and since you were so focused on your career." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. She was blaming me. She was saying that Mark cheated because I was too busy working to pay for his life. They were willing to accept a betrayal just to get a baby to show off at their country club. "You knew," I repeated. "You knew he was using my money to fund a second family, and you sat at dinner with me on Sunday and didn't say a word." I looked at the screen. Mark was looking at the phone in my father's hand, a smirk playing on his lips. He knew he had them. He had charmed them, just like he charmed everyone. "He's family, Christy," my father said firmly. "And family forgives. Now, unlock the door. We are going to sit down, open the accounts, and figure out a budget for this child. It deserves support. We are not going to abandon a baby." A budget. They wanted me to budget for his mistress's child. They wanted me to be the structure for his chaos one last time. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet click of a lock finally engaging. "You're right, Dad," I said. "The baby deserves support." Mark nodded on the screen, looking relieved. He thought he won. "But you're forgetting something Mark told me this morning." I paused. He said, "That's my baby." And he was right. It is his baby. And since he is the visionary, and I'm just the checkbook, I'm closing the bank. "Christina, if you don't open this door, I will never forgive you," my father threatened. His voice was low, dangerous. "You will be turning your back on your duty." "My duty?" I laughed. A cold, dry sound. "My duty was to love him. His duty was to be faithful. He failed. And your duty was to protect your daughter. You failed too." I watched Mark's face fall. He realized the parent card wasn't working. He grabbed the phone from my father. "Christy, listen to me," he hissed. "If you don't let me in, I'm suing for spousal support. I'll take half the house. I'll take half your pension. You earn more than me. You owe me." "I owe you?" I asked. "Mark, do you remember that paper you signed last night? The loan agreement for the server money?" He blinked. "Yeah? So what?" "Read the fine print," I said. "It wasn't a loan. It was a waiver. You signed a document stating that you are separating your finances for a business venture and waiving all claims to marital assets in exchange for the liquidity. You signed away your right to spousal support, to buy a crib you can't afford." Mark went pale. He dropped the phone. He looked at my father, panic rising in his chest. I had trapped him with his own greed. "And Dad?" I added, my voice soft but final. "You can stand on the porch all night, but you should know. I listed the house for sale an hour ago. The realtor is coming in 10 minutes to put up the sign." My father looked at the house, his face purple with rage. "You wouldn't?" He spat. "Watch me," I said. "I'm not the cement anymore. I'm the wrecking ball." I hung up the phone. On the screen, I saw a sleek white car pull up to the curb. It wasn't the realtor. It was a woman. She stepped out, holding a stomach that was just starting to show. It was Lisa. And she looked like she was ready to fight. The woman in the driveway was Lisa. I had never seen her face clearly, only in small profile pictures on social media. But in person, she looked ordinary. She wasn't a supermodel. She was just younger. She walked up the driveway with a hand on her stomach, wearing a coat that I recognized from a charge on my credit card last month. She looked at Mark, then at my parents, and finally, at the locked front door. She didn't look scared. She looked annoyed. "Mark?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Why are you sitting on the ground? And who are these people?" She pointed a manicured finger at my mother. My mother, who had just said we should budget for this woman's baby, looked like she had swallowed a lemon. The fantasy of the grandchild was colliding with the reality of the mistress. Mark scrambled to his feet. He looked terrified. His two worlds, the one where he was a dutiful son and the one where he was a rich playboy, were crashing into each other. "Lisa, baby, just wait in the car," he begged, trying to steer her away. "We're just dealing with a technical issue with the house access." Lisa slapped his hand away. "A technical issue?" "Mark, my card was declined at the doctor's office. You said you handled the transfer." "I drove all the way here because you weren't answering your phone." She looked at the house, my house, with hungry eyes. "And why haven't we gone inside? I want to see the nursery. You said the walls were being framed today." I leaned closer to my laptop screen. This was the moment. "Actually, Lisa," I said into the microphone. My voice boomed out of the doorbell speaker, making everyone jump. "The nursery has been canceled due to lack of funding, and the house isn't Mark's. It's mine." Lisa froze. She looked up at the camera, squinting. "Who is that?" she demanded. "That's the landlord," I said coolly. "And the bank? And the wife?" Lisa turned slowly to Mark. Her face changed. The annoyance was gone, replaced by a cold, hard calculation. She looked at his sweaty face, his cheap suit, and his panicked eyes. She did the math in her head, and the answer was 0. Just then, a white truck pulled up to the curb behind my parents' silver sedan. A man in a green polo shirt jumped out, holding a wooden post and a hammer. It was the realtor. He walked briskly onto the lawn, whistling a happy tune, completely ignoring the family drama unfolding on the driveway. He found a nice spot near the mailbox and started hammering the "for sale" sign into the grass. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The sound echoed like a judge's gavel. Mark turned pale. "Hey!" he shouted, running toward the realtor. "You can't put that there. This is my house. Stop!" The realtor didn't even stop hammering. He just looked over his shoulder. "Owner listed it an hour ago, buddy. Name on the deed is Christy Malone. Are you Christy? Mark stopped running. He stood there, defeated, while the red "Coming Soon" sign swayed in the breeze. Lisa walked over to the sign. She touched it, as if checking to see if it was real. Then she turned to Mark. You told me you owned this place, she hissed. You told me she was just the roommate who paid the bills. You said you were the owner. Mark tried to grab her arm. I am the visionary, Lisa. I built this lifestyle. We can fix this. Lisa laughed. It was a cruel, ugly sound. You didn't build anything, Mark. You're just a squatter. She looked at my parents, then at the house one last time. I'm not raising a baby in a rental, she spat. Lisa turned around and walked back to her car. She didn't look back. She got in, started the engine, and drove away. She left Mark standing on the lawn next to the "For Sale" sign. He watched her taillights disappear, just like I had watched his earlier. But he didn't look heartbroken. He looked panicked. His safety net was gone. His trophy was gone. And now he had to face the only people left, his parents. My father walked up to him. I thought he would hug him. Instead, he looked at Mark with pure disgust. You fool, my father muttered. You had a golden goose, and you cooked her for dinner. My parents got into their car. They didn't invite Mark inside. We'll call you, my mother said through the window, her voice weak. They drove away, leaving their son standing alone on the driveway of a house he was locked out of. Mark walked up to the camera one last time. He pressed his face close to the lens. His eyes were red, wild. You think you won? He whispered. You think you can just leave me? I'll ruin you, Christy. I know people. I'll sue you for everything. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Then he kicked the flower pot off the porch and stormed off down the street, walking because he couldn't afford a ride. 2 weeks later, the silence was almost complete. I had moved fully into my new apartment. The old house was under contract, sold to a nice family who wanted to turn the guest room into a library. Mark had moved back into his parents' basement. I heard through a friend that he was working part-time at his dad's hardware store, stocking shelves. The visionary was now organizing screws and bolts. It was poetic, but he wasn't done yet. On a Tuesday morning, exactly 3 weeks after the shower incident, a letter arrived at my office. It was on heavy, expensive paper. Legal notice. Demand for spousal support. I opened it. It was a threat. Mark was claiming that he had become accustomed to a certain standard of living, and that my financial abandonment had caused him emotional distress. He wanted $5,000 a month. He wanted half of my savings. He wanted to drag this out in court. He thought I would be scared. He thought I would pay him just to make him go away. He still didn't understand who I was. He thought I was the woman who avoided conflict. He forgot that I was the woman who kept the receipts. I didn't call my lawyer. I didn't call him. I simply sat down at my computer and composed a single email. I attached 2 files to the email. The first was the post-nuptial asset waiver he had signed blindly at the dinner table, thinking it was a loan for his company. That document legally stripped him of any claim to my money. The second file was an audio clip. It was a recording from the bathroom monitor, a nanny cam I had installed months ago to watch the dog, but which had perfectly captured the audio from the shower. I titled the email, Exhibit A, The Visionary. The audio file was just 1 sentence long. Once the crib is in, that's my baby. And she's going to pay for every inch of its life. I sent it to his lawyer. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was his lawyer. Mrs. Malone, he said, sounding tired. We are dropping the case. Have a nice life. I leaned back in my chair. It was over. The threats, the noise, the demands, it all stopped instantly. The collapse was total. Mark had no wife, no mistress, no house, and no case. He was back to exactly what he was before he met me. A man with a lot of words and nothing to show for them. I looked out the window at the city below. I used to think my life was about holding things up, about being the wall that protected everyone else. But as I watched the sun set, I realized that sometimes the most beautiful thing you can do is let the whole house fall down. Now, all that was left was to walk through the rubble and see what kind of future I could build on my own. It has been 3 months since the day the legal threats stopped. My life is very quiet now, but it is a good kind of quiet. It isn't the silence of secrets or the silence of holding your breath waiting for the next bad thing to happen. It is the silence of peace. I live in my new apartment, the one with the big windows that let in all the sunlight. I wake up when I want to. I drink my coffee while it is still hot. Nobody is asking me for money. Nobody is asking me to build a wall or pay a bill. For a long time, I thought silence was lonely. Now I know that silence is actually just the sound of freedom. I finally have enough space to hear my own thoughts, and I like what they are saying. I drove past the old hardware store last week. It belongs to Mark's father. I didn't mean to look, but the red light held me there. I saw Mark through the big glass window. He wasn't wearing his fancy suits anymore. He was wearing a blue vest with a name tag. He was stocking shelves, putting heavy boxes of nails in straight rows. He looked tired. He looked older. The visionary who wanted to change the world was now sorting screws for $12 an hour. It was strange. I didn't feel angry at him. I didn't feel happy to see him suffering. I just felt nothing. He was just a stranger who used to live in my house. He was a bad investment that I finally wrote off. My parents tried to call me a few times. My mother left voicemails crying about family unity and how they missed me. But she didn't miss me. She missed the dinners I paid for. She missed the way I fixed everyone's problems so she didn't have to. I sent them one letter. It was short. I told them that I wished them the best, but that I was done being the glue that held their broken pieces together. I told them that love isn't about what you can take from someone, it's about what you give. And since they had nothing left to give me but guilt, I was closing the door. I haven't heard from them since. It hurts a little, sure, but it hurts less than being used. I heard rumors about Lisa. The city is small, and people love to talk. She didn't stay with Mark. Of course she didn't. She fell in love with his wallet, not his heart. When the wallet turned out to be empty, she packed her bags. I heard she moved back in with her sister. I hope she is okay. I hope her baby is okay. It isn't the baby's fault that its father is a liar. Sometimes I wonder if that baby will grow up and ask where its dad is. I hope Lisa tells the truth. I hope she tells her child that some men are like clouds, they look pretty from far away. But if you try to lean on them, you just fall right through. Work is different now, too. I used to work hard because I was terrified of losing everything. I worked to fill the hole that Mark kept digging in our bank account. Now, I work for me. I got a promotion last month. The boss said I was focused and sharp. I laughed when he said it. He didn't know that I learned how to be sharp because I had to cut myself loose from a trap. I used my bonus to book a trip. Not a business trip, a real vacation. I am going to Italy. I am going to eat pasta that I didn't have to cook, and I am going to look at art that I didn't have to pay for with my dignity. I am finally investing in the only person who never let me down, myself. Mark used to say I wasn't soft. He said I was made for the grind. He meant it as an insult. He wanted a soft life, a life where everything was easy and handed to him. But he didn't understand something important. You can't have a soft life if you have a weak spine. Softness costs money. Softness requires safety. You can only relax when you know the walls around you are strong. I realized that I am soft. I love beautiful things. I love quiet mornings. I love kindness. But I had to be hard for 5 years because I was carrying him on my back. Now that I put him down, I can finally be soft. I can finally rest. Yesterday, I walked past a construction site downtown. They were pouring cement for a new building. I stopped and watched the gray sludge flow into the wooden frames. It looked ugly and heavy, but I knew that once it dried, it would be strong enough to hold up a skyscraper. I smiled. I used to hate being called the cement of the family, but now I wear it like a badge of honor. Cement is what makes the world stand up. Mark was just the paint, colorful, thin, and prone to peeling when the weather got bad. The paint gets all the compliments, but the cement does all the work. And when the storm comes, the paint washes away, but the cement stays. I kept the audio file of the shower conversation. I don't listen to it anymore, but I keep it on my computer in a folder named The Wake Up Call. Sometimes, when I feel lonely or when I start to wonder if I was too harsh, I look at that file name. It reminds me that I didn't ruin his life. He ruined it the moment he opened his mouth to brag about betraying me. I just let the consequences catch up to him. He wanted a story where he was the hero and I was the villain. But in the end, he was just a lesson, a very expensive, very painful lesson that taught me how to say no. People ask me if I am afraid to be alone. They think a woman without a husband is like a house without a roof, but I tell them I am not alone. I am with myself, and I am pretty good company. I don't lie to myself. I don't steal from myself. I don't cheat on myself. I treat myself with the respect that he never gave me. I curated my freedom just like an art exhibit. I removed the ugly pieces, I threw out the trash, and I put the spotlight on the truth. My life is the exhibit now, and for the first time in forever, I am proud to put my name on it. If you are watching this, and you feel like you are the one holding up the sky for everyone else, please listen to me. You don't have to break to prove you are strong. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. If someone loves you, they will help you carry the load, not add to it. Hit subscribe if you believe that everyone deserves to be loved for who they are, not for what they can pay for. Share this story if you think the truth always comes out in the end. And if you are brave enough to walk away from something that is hurting you, comment, "I am my own shelter," below. Do it for the version of you that is waiting to be free. Do it because you are worth more than just being someone else's stepping stone. You are the whole path. Walk it with your head high.